We're leaving tomorrow, Dad, and I've already sold your beach house." The words were sharp, deliberate. They sliced through the clinking of cutlery and the quiet hum of the ocean rolling against the shore. For a moment I thought I'd misheard, but then I saw her. The calm way she dabbed her lips with a napkin, the proud little lift in her chin, and the flicker of something dark in her husband's smug smile. My fork slipped from my hand and hit the porcelain plate with a metallic scrape that made everyone at the table flinch. The roasted chicken, golden and steaming, suddenly smelled like nothing. My throat felt tight, as though someone had filled the air with smoke. The house. Elena's house. The place where my wife and I raised our daughter, where summers smelled of salt water and grilled fish, where her laughter used to echo against the tide. Sold. Just like that. I'm grateful you're here listening to my story. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It means more than you know to share these memories, because sometimes telling a story is the only way to keep a promise alive. My name is Michael Reyes. I'm 62 years old, and I live in a modest coastal town where the sea is both neighbour and intruder, depending on the weather. For 30 years I owned a cabinet shop, small but steady. My hands learned the language of wood, the patience of oak, the stubbornness of pine, the clean honesty of cedar. I built furniture that outlived fashions, tables that held 3 generations of Sunday dinners, doors that creaked with welcome. When my wife Elena was alive, we dreamed simply. We saved, we worked, we raised our daughter Sophia. The beach house wasn't just a purchase, it was a covenant. We scraped together what little we had, patched its roof with our bare hands, and Elena planted rosemary by the front steps because she said every home should greet you with scent before sight. That house became our heartbeat. Elena's laugh still lingers there, in the corners where the light falls soft. After she passed, the house became my chapel of memory. I polished the floors like prayer, kept her favourite curtains even though the fabric had faded. Sophia once told me, with tears in her eyes, "We'll keep the house, Dad. Always. For Mum." That promise lived in me like breath itself. Tonight, the dining room should have been warm, welcoming. The golden lamplight brushed the wood-panelled walls, the smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the air, the windows cracked open so the sound of the ocean could keep us company. A salty breeze stirred the curtains, making them rise and fall like lungs taking careful breaths. I'd set the table myself, linen cloth, silver polished until it caught the candlelight, Elena's old ceramic serving dish in the centre. I wanted to remind my daughter of home, of family, of everything we'd built together. But across from me sat Sophia, stiff in a black dress too severe for a family dinner, hair slicked back, lips painted in a shade too sharp for her natural softness. She didn't look at me the way daughters do, with warmth, with memory. She looked through me, as though I were a ledger she'd already signed off on. Beside her lounged Adrian, my son-in-law. His suit was tailored too tightly for comfort, his smile stretched too perfectly. He poured wine as if he were hosting, topping off Sophia's glass first, then others around the table before finally reaching mine. When he tilted the bottle, I pressed 2 fingers over my glass. His smile twitched. "Suit yourself," he said, the words sugar-coated, but the mockery behind them bitter. "It was the smart thing to do," Adrian announced, swirling his own glass. "The market's high. You don't hesitate when opportunity knocks." "Opportunity?" The word tore itself from my chest before I could stop it. "Yes," he said smoothly, placing a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Selling when we did sets us up for the future. New beginnings, right, darling?" "New beginnings," Sophia echoed, but her voice wavered, like a violin string pulled too tight. I searched her eyes, desperate for the little girl who used to run barefoot through that house, hair wet with seawater, holding seashells like treasures. But the woman before me wouldn't meet my gaze. My chest constricted. I heard myself whisper, "You sold my house." Adrian laughed lightly, shaking his head. "Her house, sir. We're family. Decisions are joint. We don't cling to relics." Relics. He said it as though love, memory, history, Eleanor herself were just outdated furniture to be discarded. Sophia took a breath, steadying herself. "We leave tomorrow, Dad. Everything's arranged. The paperwork is finished. It all happened so quickly." Of course it did. That's how men like Adrian work, fast, ruthless, counting on love to be slower than greed. I stared at her, aching. "Did you ask me?" Her lips parted, but no apology followed. Just a shrug. "We didn't need to." She repeated the words like a defense, but they landed like betrayal. Adrian clinked his glass against hers. "To tomorrow," he toasted, smirking. The room didn't move. Chairs scraped slightly as relatives shifted uncomfortably. No one lifted their glass. The silence pressed heavy like the moment before a storm breaks. I lowered my gaze to my lap, to my jacket pocket, where my fingers had already found what I'd been holding on to for weeks. An envelope, thick, worn at the corners, humming with weight. The deed, the truth. The anchor that tied our family's legacy to me still. Paper doesn't argue. Paper doesn't forget. It simply waits for the right moment. I traced the embossed seal with my thumb, steadying my breath. They thought their words were the end of it. They thought I was powerless, that love meant surrender. But they didn't know. Not yet. The ocean groaned beyond the window, the tide pulling out like a witness holding its breath. Sophia lifted her glass, fingers trembling. Adrian beamed like a man already counting his winnings. I tightened my hand around the envelope, feeling its cool certainty press against my palm. "To tomorrow," Adrian repeated, raising his glass higher. I met my daughter's eyes, cold, guarded, yet flickering with something buried deep, and whispered back, "Yes, to tomorrow." But in my chest, I wasn't toasting their beginning. I was promising an ending. They didn't know what tomorrow really held, not yet. The first time I saw the place, it was a tired little box with peeling paint and a roof that sighed when the wind leaned on it. Elena stood in the sandy driveway with her hands on her hips, hair pulled back, eyes bright with that kind of optimism that could shame the weather. "It smells like damp rope and old lemons," I said. She grinned. "It smells like a future, Michael." We walked through rooms that had more ghosts than furniture. The kitchen window stuck halfway. I had to shoulder it open. Sea light poured across the battered counters like it had been waiting. Elena looked at me, and I knew we were already moving in, even if the bank didn't know it yet. We signed on a Wednesday afternoon, still in work clothes. Elena squeezed my hand so hard the notary laughed. "A beach house?" he said, stamping the last page. "You two must like the water." "We like home," she answered. That first summer, we lived like campers with good intentions. We patched shingles, replaced a soft joist, sanded floors until our wrists hummed at night. We slept on a mattress on the living room floor with the slider cracked to let the ocean in. Elena planted rosemary by the steps and marigolds by the mailbox because she said colour keeps sorrow on a leash. On Saturdays, I grilled fish and peppers while she mixed lime and salt and told Sophia stories about the sea keeping secrets for kind people. Sophia was 6 and unafraid of anything that summer. She ran barefoot from the porch to the waterline, back again, a bright ribbon streaking through our days. I taught her to skip stones and watched her try to make the ocean notice. She named the shells she found. "This one's Elena Jr.," she said, and my wife laughed like bells in wind. We built habits the way some people build fences. Sunday morning pancakes, Wednesday evening walks to the pier to watch the fishermen talk in silhouettes, birthday piñatas swinging from the old cedar out back, sand stuck to icing, cousins howling when the candy exploded over the dune grass, bonfires that made the stars look shy. The night Sophia learned to swim is a room I can still walk into. The water was a pane of hammered glass, the sunset bleeding copper at the edges. Elena waded beside her, hand under Sophia's belly, whispering, "Float, mi corazón. The ocean is a cradle if you respect it." When Sophia finally took 3 wobbly strokes on her own, she popped up and screamed, "I did it!" Then she ran to me, salty and shaking, and I lifted her high while Elena clapped. The tide carried that sound away, but it kept the echo for us. That house wasn't a structure. It was a calendar of vows. Every doorway had a story. Every scuff had a name. When Elena got sick, the house did what houses are supposed to do. It held us. The day after the funeral, I drove there before anyone else woke up. The rosemary by the steps had gone wild, bees fat and drunk on it. I sat on the bottom stair and cried like a man whose map had been stolen. Later, Sophia came and leaned her head against my shoulder without speaking. We watched the tide climb and fall and climb again. "We'll keep it, Dad," she said. "So Mom never has to leave." I did not sell the house then. Though money was loud and bills were rude, I doubled shifts at the shop, learned how to fall asleep to sawdust instead of lullabies. At the beach place, I cooked simple things. Rice with tomatoes, tortillas warmed on a pan, beans with onion and bay leaf, because the kitchen remembered Elena and wouldn't forgive me if I ordered takeout. Sophie and I made our own rhythms. On stormy nights we lit candles and read each other's favourite lines from dog-eared books. When she cried for no reason that made sense, I held her until the reason ran out of energy. I taught her to sand with the grain and to fix what could be fixed before throwing anything away, objects, plans, people. She taught me how to make playlists and that you can slice mangoes with a spoon if you're careful. We learned to be two, and some days it nearly felt like enough. Lucy came into that stretch of our lives the way good luck sometimes pretends to be coincidence. She's my late sister's girl, but time made the word niece too small. She drove down on Thursdays with a trunk full of groceries and that quick, honest laugh that cleans a room. She'd check the fridge, scold me for keeping exactly 3 condiments and no vegetables, then slip a casserole into the oven with instructions taped on top. "Family isn't a circle," she liked to say, handing Sophia a stack of bowls. "It's a net." Years turned pages. Sophia left for college, came back summers to nap with the slider open and the curtains breathing like a cat. She brought friends who fell in love with the place the way strangers love a postcard. They offered to buy it as a joke. "Not even in a better world," Sophia would say, and my heart would lay down like a tired dog and rest. Then Adrian arrived. At first I mistook his energy for ambition. He admired the house the way people admire expensive watches, like they're calculating. "Great potential," he said, tapping a knuckle on the banister I'd restored with 3 coats of patience. "You ever think of modernizing? Flip it and level up?" "Modernize what holds us?" I asked, soft, because I didn't want Sophia to hear the warning in my teeth. Sophia laughed and bumped his shoulder. "He's kidding, Dad." Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't. A man can hide behind a grin for a long time if no one checks the rent. The first red flag didn't wave. It whispered. One afternoon I came by with empanadas Lucy had made. Sophia and Adrian were at the dining table with spreadsheets open, numbers marching in neat rows. Adrian looked at the plate, then at the window, then at the property tax notice he'd unfolded like evidence. "I mean, look at it," he said, half to Sophia, half to the ceiling. "This place is a drag on cash. Beachfront maintenance, taxes, insurance. Sentiment's expensive. It's kind of a waste of money." Sophia didn't meet my eyes. She pinched the bridge of her nose the way Elna did when a headache was coming. "Maybe," she said, "only that. And it was worse than if she'd argued with him or with me." Later, on the porch, I asked gently, "Do you think the house is a waste?" She stared at the rosemary bush, bees stitching little golden errands in and out. "I think the world is heavy," she said at last. "Adrian says we should travel, move inland for a while, invest. He says we're stuck here because Mom—" She stopped, swallowed. "I don't know." I told her what I have always believed, that a house can be a bank account or a belonging, but rarely both. That profit is a hungry thing and memory is a patient one. That her mother's hands were still in the drawer pulls and the banister curve. Sophia nodded like a student who respects a teacher and plans to switch majors anyway. The signs multiplied. Quietly at first, then like gulls once they spot a dropped chip. Adrian began hosting friends at the beach place when I wasn't invited, walking them through rooms with a tone I recognized from realtors and thieves. He started sentences with "when we" instead of "if we," as if decisions were debts the future owed him. Lucy saw it too. "He talks about the house like it's a horse he means to race and sell," she said, helping me stack chairs after a Sunday meal. Not like a home. Maybe he's just thinking in numbers, I said, because doubt is a kind of hope that doesn't want to admit it's tired. Numbers are fine, she said. Greed is loud, even when it whispers. A week later, I arrived with a bag of limes and found Sophia and Adrian on the deck, paper spread out, the ocean doing its slow breathing beyond them. He didn't even bother to lower his voice. Once we unlock the equity, we're free, he told her, tapping the page. We can leave this place behind. Start fresh. You'll thank me. Sophia's mouth made a line. It's my mother's house, she said, but it sounded like she was telling that to herself. Adrian kissed her temple and smiled past me at a future only he could see. It's our opportunity, he said. That was the moment a cold certainty put its hand on my shoulder. This man didn't see a hearth or a history. He saw a balance sheet. He saw the ocean as a backdrop and memory as inefficient. He would turn our anchor into a sail and leave me waving on the shore. I touched the railing Elena and I had sanded smooth a lifetime ago. It was warm from the sun and from all the hands that had held it. Adrian talked on, numbers like little stones he flicked at the horizon, and I understood. He wasn't planning to live in our story. He was planning to sell it. The first time Sophia brought Adrian home, he arrived with a bouquet so large it looked like it should have come with its own cart. He held it like a trophy in one hand and my daughter's elbow in the other, guiding her through my doorway as if she were the one who didn't know the house. "Mr. Reyes," he said, flashing teeth. "What a beautiful home. The craftsmanship, authentic. You can feel the history." He ran his palm along the door jamb I'd planned smooth 20 years ago, nodding gravely as though he'd inspected a cathedral. "Michael," I said, taking the flowers, lilies and roses in a colour that clashed with the kitchen tile. "We keep it simple here." "Simple is elegant," he said, not hearing me so much as performing me. He kissed Sophia's cheek for my benefit, a stage gesture with too much bow in it. I could see why she was charmed. He was handsome the way a magazine page is handsome, gloss first, questions later. He complimented the stove, my knives, the salt I used. "Artisan," he said, tapping the box. Then he turned the pepper grinder as if he were setting a wristwatch. While Sophia was in the kitchen dressing the salad, he leaned toward me and lowered his voice. "I've heard a lot about you," he said. "Legend, right? Local wood whisperer." He smiled. I mean, old school, but in a charming way. It was said with sugar, but sugar can cut the mouth if it's crystallized. I let it pass, the way you let a wave pass when you're testing the rip current. At dinner, he told stories that skimmed along the surface of things. Promotions, contacts, plans, the kind of plans that rely on other people believing in the word momentum. Sophia laughed often, her eyes bright the way they get when she wants everything to be good. I told a story about when she was 10 and insisted on learning dovetail joints, tiny fingers stubborn around a chisel, tears and triumph in the same afternoon. "Cute," he said, glancing at his phone. "I guess that's why she's so determined." Sophia nudged him with her knee under the table. "He means it as a compliment, Dad." I smiled because daughters teach fathers to choose peace when they can. After dessert, Elena's recipe for lime bars, he declared them retro. Sophia went to pack leftovers for him. Adrian stood beside the mantel, studying the framed photo of Eleanor, the sun behind her turning her hair into a halo. "She was pretty," he said. "Tough act to follow." "She was kind," I said. He tilted his head. Different metrics. When Sophia came back, his smile clicked on again like a sensor light. The months that followed were a drift disguised as a dance. He showed up often, always with something improving to suggest. "Have you thought about staging the place?" he asked one Sunday, eyes travelling across the living room like a real estate drone. "Less personal photos, more neutrals. There's a psychology to space." "There's a soul to it too," I said. "There's a soul to it too," I said. He laughed, accepting the plate of empanadas Lucy handed him. "You're funny, Mr. Reyes. I like that." Lucy didn't laugh. Later, while we washed dishes, she asked, "Do you ever notice how he talks at the house like it's a person he's trying to sell a policy to?" "I notice," I said. "Greed looks polite at first," she murmured, running the sponge in slow circles. Then it starts moving furniture in its head. Sophia defended him gently, faithfully. "He's ambitious, Dad," she said one evening on the porch. "He wants a future that isn't paycheck to paycheck. Isn't that what you always wanted for me?" "Ambition's a tool," I said, "like a chisel, useful if you know where to stop." "He knows," she said, and her certainty made me lonelier than doubt would have. At their engagement dinner, he chose the restaurant and the table near the window, where the sea was framed as a backdrop. He raised his glass and delivered a toast that was all runway and very little airplane, to Sophia, my brilliant partner, and to building a life that looks forward, not backward. We're not our parents' generation. We know how to make assets work. Laughter bubbled from the friends he'd invited. They wore the kind of watches that catch candlelight. I lifted my water instead of the wine he kept refilling when my eyes were elsewhere. He turned to me with a smile meant for photographs. "And to Michael, whose old-fashioned values taught Sophia discipline. We'll update the operating system, but hey, every software needs legacy code, right?" The table chuckled, unsure of the script. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes pleaded, "Don't make a scene." I smiled, the carpenter's smile, the one you use when the nail bends and you pretend it meant to. "Legacy code keeps the lights on," I said. He winked as if we were in on the same joke, but he didn't know that fathers who build houses can hear the timbre of a mockery like it's a stud finder pinging on a hollow wall. After dessert, while Sophia took a call from a cousin, he leaned close and said, "You'll like the plans once you see the numbers. You don't have to understand them to benefit." "I can read numbers," I said. "Sure," he said, patting the air between us. "I mean, at your stage of life it's about comfort. Let the next generation do the heavy lifting." He said it like an offer. It felt like an eviction notice written in compliments. The mask slipped in private moments, little snags that caught and tore if you weren't careful. I reached for the check at a diner once. He put his hand over mine. No, he said. "You keep your savings, sir. We'll take it from here." "It's breakfast," I said. "It's a habit," he replied, and the smile stayed, but the eyes went flat. At the beach house, he began labeling drawers with neat little tags, his handwriting on my map. He moved Eleanor's mixing bowls to a higher shelf for visual flow. He suggested selling the old cedar table because live edge slabs are trending. "You can't sell a table that remembers birthdays," I said. He looked at me as if I'd spoken in a language he was certain didn't scale. Lucy kept her counsel until the day she didn't. We were stacking folding chairs after a Sunday cookout. Adrian was in the driveway, laughing on a call that was at least half performance. "He smiles like a showroom," she said, "but there's a calculator behind his teeth." "He wants to provide?" I said, testing my own neutrality. "He wants to own," she countered. "There's a difference." She wiped her hands on a towel, eyes on Sophia across the yard, where my daughter was fitting a paper crown on a cousin's toddler. "He's measuring everything that can be liquidated, even her loyalty." I didn't want to believe it. Love makes faith out of fumes. "Sophia's strong," I said. "She's kind," Lucy said gently. "Kindness is a bridge and a target. Watch the way he aims." The ending beat came one evening when the wind had dropped and the ocean lay like a thick sheet of metal. I was on the deck, oiling the railing Elena and I had sanded with our palms years ago, when their voices drifted through the open slider, Sophia's low and tired, Adrian's bright as coins. "It's not just money," Sophia was saying. "It's Mom's. It's ours." "It will be ours," he murmured, smoothing. "That's the point. Think about freedom. No more repairs, no more weekends chained to this place. We cash out, we go inland, we invest, we live, you and me. Once we have that house money, we'll finally be free." The brush paused in my hand. Oil gleamed on the wood, catching the last light. Sophia didn't answer. I heard the sound of her setting a glass down carefully, the way you do when you're trying not to break two things at once. "Trust me," he added, soft, as if he were lighting a match in a room full of gas. "Your dad will come around, or he won't. Either way, this is the smart play." The ocean didn't move, neither did I. Some promises are wooden. They don't bend. Some truths are paper. They don't tear. I set the brush in the jar, wiped my hands on a rag Elena had used to polish that same rail a lifetime ago, and listened to the man inside tell my daughter that the quickest way to a future was to pawn her past. The night cooled. A gull called, one loud disbelieving sound, and the house held its breath with me. It started small, too small maybe for anyone else to notice. One summer evening, when the tide was gentle and the sky was painted in Eleanor's favourite shades of lavender, I suggested we roast marshmallows out by the dunes. It was a tradition, one Sophia and I had kept alive even after her mother's passing. The smell of smoke and sweet sugar always brought her laughter back to me, at least for a night. But that evening, Sophia shifted in her chair and glanced at Adrian, who was already shaking his head. "We're not kids anymore, Dad," she said softly. "Adrian thinks, well, maybe we don't need to cling to the past so much." Adrian smiled, smug, and added, "Exactly. It's time for new traditions. Bonfires on the beach? That's outdated, messy, and honestly a little dangerous. We should think bigger. Vacations overseas, curated experiences, not s'mores." I felt the spark die before it was ever lit, and for the first time I realized it wasn't about safety or mess. It was about erasing the fingerprints Elena and I had left behind. The comments grew sharper as weeks passed. At breakfast one morning, while I fried eggs the way Sophia always liked them, Adrian leaned back in his chair, scrolling on his phone. Without looking up, he said, "You've worked hard all your life, Mr. Reyes. Don't you think it's time to retire? Let us handle things now." He said it like he was offering me a gift, but there was a blade hidden in the wrapping. "This is my retirement," I replied, sliding the plate toward Sophia. "Taking care of this home, this family." He chuckled, a sound that didn't reach his eyes. "That's sentimental. What you call tradition, the rest of the world calls stagnation. Why keep a beach house when you could liquidate the asset and reinvest? Sophia and I, we know how to make money work." The word asset hung in the air like mildew. To him this wasn't a home, it was a line on a spreadsheet. Then came the day he brought strangers. I was sanding a chair out back when I heard voices near the porch. Peeking around, I saw Adrian leading two sharply dressed men and a woman across the yard. He spoke with a realtor's swagger, pointing to the roofline, the wide deck, the ocean view that Eleanor had called God's own painting. "This is prime property," he boasted. "Original owner, well-kept, solid structure. Perfect for a flip or a rental portfolio." The woman whistled softly, impressed. I tightened my grip on the sandpaper until grit cut my palm. He hadn't said my father-in-law's home. He'd said prime property. When he noticed me, he only laughed. "Don't worry, Mr. Reyes. Just showing them what you've built. Be proud." But pride wasn't what I felt. It was trespass, dressed in a suit and tie. My ally, Lucy, my late wife's niece, saw the cracks more clearly than I wanted to admit. One evening she found Sophia sitting on the back steps, shoulders hunched, tears streaking her cheeks. Lucy approached gently, crouching beside her. "What's wrong, Soph?" she asked, brushing a strand of hair from my daughter's face. Sophia sniffled, shaking her head. "It's nothing. Adrian and I just disagree sometimes." Lucy's voice softened. "Disagree or fight?" Sophia hesitated, then whispered, "He just wants things his way. He says I don't understand what it takes to build a future, that I'm too emotional, like Mom was." Those words must have stung like salt on a wound. I heard about it later from Lucy, who told me in the quiet of the kitchen after Sophia had gone to bed. "She defends him," Lucy said, drying her hands on a towel. "Even through the tears. But she's not the same. She avoids looking you in the eye sometimes, doesn't she?" I nodded. I'd felt it too, the way Sophia smiled less often, the way her laughter caught in her throat, the way she seemed to be shrinking into herself while insisting she was fine. I tried once, just once, to break through. Sophia and I were alone, folding laundry in the den. I took a breath, feeling the words heavy on my tongue. "Soph, are you okay? Really?" She froze, a towel clenched in her hands. Then she forced a laugh. "Of course, Dad, we're fine. Adrian just wants the best for us, for me." Her voice cracked, but she didn't let me hold on to it. She turned quickly, stuffing shirts into a drawer as though busy hands could silence worried hearts. "We're fine," she repeated, firmer this time, like a shield she needed me to believe in. I let it go, though every bone in my body screamed not to. Because sometimes when a child is trapped in a storm, they'll cling tighter to the one causing it, convinced that letting go would mean drowning. And then came the explosive reveal. We sat at dinner, golden light spilling across the table, roast chicken filling the room with the scent of rosemary and garlic. I carved silently while Adrian poured wine he knew I wouldn't drink. Sophia sat stiff, her fork untouched. Then, with a tone so casual it felt cruel, she dropped it. "It's done," she said, eyes fixed on her plate. "I already sold the house. We're leaving tomorrow." My hand slipped, the carving knife biting too deep into the chicken breast. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the hiss of fat hitting the pan. Adrian smiled, smug and satisfied. He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." Lucy's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The house Elena and I had built with love, the home that held every memory of Sophia's childhood, had been sold without my blessing, without my voice, without even my knowledge. Sophia's shoulders were tense, her face pale, but she didn't look up. Inside me, something cracked. Rage boiled like a tide I could barely hold back. My chest tightened with heartbreak, my throat thick with silence, but I said nothing. Because in my pocket, folded tight and close to my heart, was the envelope Adrian and Sophia didn't know about. The deed. The house was still mine, and they had no idea. Beneath the table, I clenched my fist so tightly my knuckles ached. I let their words ring, their toasts fall flat, their future balance on lies. Because patience, I've learned, is sharper than any blade, and soon they would know the truth. That night, long after the table was cleared and the last chair pushed in, I sat alone in the living room. The only light came from the lamp in the corner, its glow stretching across the worn photographs on the mantel. My hand lingered on one in particular, a photo of Elena, her hair blown by the sea breeze, her arm looped around my shoulder as we stood on the porch of the beach house the day we bought it. Her smile in that picture was wide and unguarded, the smile of a woman who believed in tomorrow. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, letting memory carry me. It was 25 years ago, a blustery spring morning. Eleanor and I had just signed the last of the papers, the ink barely dry. She pressed the pen down with a flourish and then turned to me, eyes shining. "This is it," she whispered. "Our family's safe haven, a place where Sophia will grow up knowing the ocean sings for her too." I remember laughing at her poetry, but my chest had swelled with pride. We were young then, stretched thin, but determined. I worked extra shifts at the shipyard. Elena took on tutoring jobs after school hours. Every dollar pinched and saved brought us closer to that house by the sea. It wasn't luxury. It was legacy. A promise. As I sat there now, my daughter's cold words replayed in my mind. "It's done. I already sold it. We're leaving tomorrow." The image cut me like glass. For years I had fought to keep that house upright, patching the roof, sanding the deck, replacing windows after storms. I thought one day, when Sophia had her own children, she'd bring them there to chase gulls on the sand, to roast marshmallows in the fire pit, to feel their grandmother's love in the walls. But instead, I was left with the sound of Adrian's smug toast ringing in my ears. To new beginnings. And then, like a light flicking on, I remembered something they didn't know. The sale wasn't theirs to make. I never transferred the deed. Not when Sophia turned 18, not when she got engaged, not even when she pleaded once during college to use the house as collateral for a loan. I had nodded, told her, maybe someday, but deep down I knew some things can't be signed away. Legally, the house was still mine. Every nail, every board, every inch of sand beneath it. I pulled the envelope from my desk drawer, hands trembling. Inside was the deed. The thick paper yellowed with time but intact, official stamps still clear. My name. Only my name. The truth glared back at me, undeniable. A storm of emotion hit me all at once. First, devastation, because the daughter I'd raised with Elena's love now believed she could erase everything we had built together. Then, fury, because Adrian's greedy hands had twisted her vision until she couldn't even see what was sacred anymore. And finally, calm resolve, because if there was one thing I owed Elena, and one thing I owed Sophia, even if she couldn't see it now, it was to protect our legacy. I would not let it end like this. That was when Lucy walked in, my ally, my quiet anchor. She had stayed late, helping tidy up, her eyes sharp with worry since dinner. She froze when she saw me hunched over the deed, tears standing in my eyes. "Uncle Mateo?" she asked softly. I held up the paper, my voice ragged. "They think they've sold it. But it's still mine, always has been." She stepped closer, her expression shifting from confusion to relief to determination. "Then this is it," she said. "This is your chance, not just for you, for Aunt Eleanor, for Sophia, for the family." Her words steadied me. She was right. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembrance. About drawing a line in the sand no tide could wash away. I folded the deed carefully, sliding it into the inside pocket of my jacket. My fingers lingered there, pressing against the paper like it was Elena's hand. Tomorrow, at the farewell gathering, I would tell the truth. Not with anger, not with spite, but with the weight of love and the authority of a man who refused to be erased. The waves outside crashed softly against the shore, as if the ocean itself was waiting for me to stand. And I knew tomorrow they would learn that this house was never theirs to sell. It was our family's safe haven, and it always would be. By late afternoon, the house looked like it always does before a goodbye, too clean, too bright, like a face powdered for a camera. The kitchen hummed with cousins and casserole dishes. Someone started a playlist of old summer songs that made the floorboards remember how to sway. Out on the deck, the ocean breathed like a giant sleeping animal, calm and heavy. But beneath the laughter, there was something tight in the air, like a wire pulled between two nails. Everyone felt it. No one named it. Sophia and Adrian arrived together, hand in hand, dressed like a couple in a brochure about leaving your troubles behind. She wore a soft blue dress that should have looked like sky. It looked like goodbye. He wore a jacket a shade too sharp for the beach, his hair slicked, his smile practiced. They made a slow tour of the room, accepting hugs as if they were collecting signatures. "One last gathering before the big move," Adrian kept saying. "New city, new business, new life." He kissed Sophia's temple after every sentence like a period. I stood by the kitchen doorway, my jacket buttoned though the room was warm. The envelope was a weight against my ribs, as steady as a pulse. Lucy hovered near me, an orbiting moon with eyes that missed nothing. "Michael," Aunt Rosa called, pressing a plate of empanadas into my hands. "Eat before you speak." "I will," I said, though I wouldn't. Dinner sprawled across two tables we'd pushed together end to end. Elena's old ceramic dish sat at the center like a relic rescued from a fire. Conversations braided and unbraided. Glasses chimed. Forks moved. But the laughter never rose past a certain ceiling. Adrian cleared his throat just a touch too loudly and rose with his glass raised. "Friends," he announced. "Family." He paused for a long look around the room, letting the word family sit in his mouth like he owned it. "Thank you for sending us off with love. We've made the hard choices, the smart choices. We're building something bold. The world doesn't wait, right? You seize it." A murmur rippled, some polite, some not. I watched Sophia's fingers twist the napkin in her lap, a little spiral blooming in the linen. "And," he added, glancing at me, "we appreciate the foundation that brought us here." His grin widened. "But it's time to evolve. The past is beautiful, the future is profitable." A few of his friends laughed, the expensive kind of laugh that doesn't travel well in houses like mine. Across the table, a cousin raised a brow at me. Lucy's hand brushed my sleeve, a signal, an anchor. Not yet, her touch said. Almost. Adrian lifted his glass higher. To new beginnings, he said. Then he turned his head slightly, almost casually, and added under his breath, but not quietly enough. And to the truth that your dad doesn't matter here anymore. The wire in the air snapped. Chairs creaked. A spoon clinked against a plate, and then lay still. Sophia's eyes flew to mine, wide, stricken, as if she'd just realized the floor she was standing on had a trapdoor. I stood, not fast, not dramatic. I simply rose like a man who remembered what his legs were for. The room went hush quiet. Even the playlist stuttered and fell into a softer song. Adrian, I said calmly, you've said that twice in my house. He gave a laugh meant to be charming. It died lonely. Figure of speech, he said, palms out. No disrespect, you're sentimental. We're strategic. It's a generational thing. Lucy shook her head. Don't, she warned him softly. He didn't hear her. I slid my hand into my jacket and felt the edge of the envelope, the seal, the paper that had outlasted repairs and storms and 1,000 conversations. My heart slowed, smoothed. I took the envelope out and set it on the center seam between the two tables. The thump carried, heads turned. What's this? Adrian asked a little too quickly. Truth, I said, and I opened it. There are sounds a room makes when a fact enters it, the quick breath in, the scrape of a chair, the whisper that runs like a fuse. I unfolded the deed and laid it flat, smoothing it with the side of my hand as if I were pressing out wrinkles in a flag. This house, I said, my voice steady, was not yours to sell. Adrian barked a laugh. Come on. He looked to the faces around him for backup and found only eyes. This is a misunderstanding. We already sold. Paperwork's in motion. Everyone knows that, Sophia? She didn't answer. She was staring at the document like it was a mirror showing her a face she didn't recognize. I tapped the stamped seal. Legally, I said. The property is in my name. It has always been in my name. I never transferred the deed. I let the sentence settle. You sold a story, not a house. A gasp fluttered from Aunt Rosa. A cousin whispered, Ay Dios. The word still his travelled from mouth to mouth, turning into a small storm of relief and shock. Adrian's smile frayed. This is a stunt, he said, pitching his voice higher as if volume could buy him credibility. He's confused. We have buyers, contracts. This is a family matter. Let's not... Lucy stepped forward. Her chin lifted. It is a family matter, she said, which is why we're going to handle it in the open. She put a finger on the page, reading aloud the line that mattered most, my name alone. I copied the county records last week, she added, turning to the room. They match. A wave of murmurs broke and rolled back. Someone at the end of the table said, So they lied. Another voice. They tried. Adrian's mask cracked. The eyes went flat, the mouth went hard. He pointed at me across the plates and candles. You manipulated her, he snapped. You kept control like a coward. You hoard the past so you can keep your hooks in her. Sophia flinched like a hand had been raised. Adrian! He didn't stop. You people, he said, sweeping his hand at the table. You live small, clinging to old wood and old stories. This... He slapped the edge of the deed carelessly. This is just paper. Value is what we do with things. I tried to pull us forward. I'm the only one thinking like an adult. Adrian, Lucy said, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. That paper is a promise. It's the law, and it's the home your wife grew up in. Home? He scoffed. Sentiment doesn't pay bills. Neither does theft, a cousin shot back. Aunt Rosa crossed herself. Shame, she said, not loudly, but it carried. Selling a cemetery plot would be kinder. Adrian looked around, hunting for allies and finding a jury. Sophia, he said, forcing a grin that looked painful. Tell them we agreed. Tell them you wanted this. She tried to speak. What came out was small. I didn't know the deed was still—" She swallowed. "You said Dad had already—" "I said what mattered," he cut in. "I said what gets us out of this antique." The room stiffened. Somewhere outside, a gull screamed once, like punctuation. I slid the deed closer to Sophia. "Read it," I told her gently. "Read it and remember the rosemary your mother planted by the steps. Remember the birthday piñatas. Remember what you promised me on the stair the day after the funeral, that we'd keep this as our safe haven." Her hands shook. She looked down. The candlelight trembled over the ink. I saw the moment the words stopped being shapes and became meaning. Tears surfaced, bright and shocked. Adrian saw it too, and something mean lit in his face. The charm was gone. The salesman had left. "Fine," he spat, turning on the room. "Stay here and rot. Keep your old lady ghost house. Be nobodies by the sea. We could have had a life, real money, real moves, but you'd rather worship wood." "Better wood than wolves," Lucy said. "You watch your tone," he snapped, jabbing a finger at her. A cousin stood up. Another one followed. Chairs scraped back like rolling thunder. Adrian realized then that he was alone. He tried to laugh. It broke in the middle. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, grabbing for his glass and missing. Wine sloshed, bled across the tablecloth, crept toward the deed and stopped at my hand. I lifted the paper, clean and safe, and set it on Elena's ceramic dish like a relic on an altar. The whispers rose, a tide finally given permission to move. He lied. He used her. He thought he could sell it out from under them. The playlist had fallen silent. The only music now was the family finding its voice. Sophia stood, slow as if learning gravity again. She faced him with a heartbreak that made her look like the child she once was and the woman she needed to become. "You said we were building a life," she whispered. "All this time you were dismantling one." "You'll thank me someday," he said, but even he didn't believe it. "No," she said, and the word was small but final. He looked at me, eyes narrowed to slits. "You think you've won? You old men always think—" "This isn't a game," I said, quiet. "It's a home." A chair tipped. A door somewhere clicked as a breeze moved through a hallway. The house itself seemed to stand taller. Adrian's shoulders dropped. He glanced at the faces turned toward him. No applause, no rescue. Just the long, simple stare of people who had decided what they were looking at. "You should go," Lucy said. He opened his mouth, found nothing worth saying, and shut it again. He grabbed his jacket, fumbled with the sleeve, and backed away from the table, knocking a chair askew. The front door opened with its familiar sigh, and closed with a thud that sounded like a verdict. Silence held for 3 breaths. Then Aunt Rosa exhaled a prayer. Someone started the music again, softer, older, the kind that knows how to mend. I turned to Sophia. She was looking at the deed, then at Elena's dish, then at me. The room blurred around us. "Dad," she whispered, voice breaking. "I know," I said. And I did. The ocean lifted and set its shoulder against the shore, faithful as ever. Inside, the family began to move, gently, carefully around a truth finally spoken. Adrian was gone. The house was ours. There was no escape for him now. Not from himself, not from what he'd shown us. And tomorrow, the healing would begin. The sound of Adrian's footsteps faded into nothing, swallowed by the hum of the ocean and the hush of a house that had just witnessed its own defense. For a long moment, no one moved. The family sat rooted, eyes flicking between me, Sophia, and the deed that lay on Elena's old ceramic dish, as if it were a relic that had just performed a miracle. Then, like a tide finally allowed to move, the murmurs began. Shameless. He thought he could steal it. Selling the house like it was his? The words carried heat, indignation. Uncles shook their heads. A cousin muttered, "He was never one of us." Aunt Rosa crossed herself again and whispered, "God protects truth." Sophia sat pale and still, her blue dress crumpled in her lap, her hands twisted together like knots in a rope. She looked younger than she had in years, as if the scaffolding of Adrian's charm had held her up, and now, with it gone, she was simply herself, bare, unguarded, breaking. I moved slowly, deliberately, to sit beside her. My knees creaked as I lowered myself, but I didn't mind. "Sophia," I said softly. Her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I didn't know. I thought—" Her voice cracked, then dissolved into sobs. I pulled her close, her head against my chest, just as when she was a little girl who scraped her knee on the boardwalk or woke from a storm with nightmares. I stroked her hair, whispering, "It's all right, Mihija. You were deceived. But you are not alone." The family hushed, giving us space. Lucy stepped forward, resting a hand on Sophia's back, her own eyes damp. "He tried to cut you away from all of us," Lucy said gently. "But he couldn't. You still belong here, with your father, with us." Sophia's shoulders shook harder, but this time it was the release of someone realizing the cage around her was gone. When her sobs softened, I leaned back to meet her gaze. "Sophia, listen to me." My voice was steady now, stronger. "This house was never a piece of property to be bargained with. It was the first promise I made to your mother, that we would give you a safe haven, a place where the sound of the waves would always mean home." She swallowed hard, her tears shining in the candlelight. "I never put the deed in anyone's name but mine," I continued, "because I was waiting for the moment you would need it, not to sell it, but to build your life upon it. This house was always meant for your future. Yours, not his." Her lips trembled. I let him come between us. I defended him. I doubted you." I touched her cheek. "You were blinded by what looked like love. That is not your fault. What matters is what you see now." For the first time that night, Sophia's eyes met mine without flinching. They were filled with regret, but also something else. Resolve. The evening wound down slowly. Plates were cleared, music turned softer. Relatives came by one, placing a kiss on Sophia's hair, a squeeze on my shoulder. Quiet words of support. By the time the door closed on the last guest, the house had shifted from a battleground to a sanctuary again. Lucy stayed, helping stack dishes, humming a tune Elena once used to sing. When she passed Sophia a cup of tea, she murmured, "You don't have to carry this alone. We'll rebuild together." Sophia's fingers lingered on Lucy's, gratitude unspoken but clear. Later, when the house was quiet, Sophia turned to me at the kitchen table. "Dad, can we go tomorrow, to the beach house?" I nodded. "We should." The next morning dawned bright, the sky a wide stretch of gold. Sophia and I drove together in silence, the deed safe in my jacket pocket. When we reached the old beach house, the salty wind rushed to greet us like an old friend. The wooden steps creaked just as they had for decades, familiar and forgiving. Inside, dust motes spun in the sunlight. The scent of rosemary drifted faintly from the bushes Elena had planted by the window. Sophia pressed her hand to the wall, her eyes roaming over the familiar corners. "It still smells like her," she whispered. We moved into the kitchen, where I pulled out a pan and began chopping onions. "Do you remember?" I asked with a small smile. "Your mother's arroz con pollo?" Sophia's lips parted in a tremble. She always let me stir, even when I spilled half the rice. "Then today," I said, handing her the spoon, "you stir." She laughed through her tears and took the spoon. We cooked together in that sunlit kitchen, just as we had when Elena was alive, just as we had when she was a little girl learning the rhythm of family. The aroma filled the house, the sound of sizzling oil blending with the crash of waves outside. For a moment, grief and betrayal fell away, replaced by something simple, something whole. A father and daughter, cooking, reclaiming. That evening, we sat on the porch with plates balanced on our laps, watching the tide roll in. Sophia leaned against me, her voice soft. "I'm sorry, Dad, for everything." I kissed her hair. "Don't be sorry for being human. Be grateful you opened your eyes before it was too late." She nodded slowly. "I'll protect this house like you did, I promise." Lucy, who had joined us, raised her glass of lemonade. To Elena, she said. To Elena, I echoed, raising mine. Sophia whispered the same, her eyes shining with a mix of sorrow and love. The waves clapped the shore in applause. Later, after the dishes were done and the night had deepened, I stood by the window, looking out at the silver stripe of moonlight on the ocean. My heart was heavy but not broken. I thought of what this ordeal had taught me. Family legacy isn't about money. It isn't about control or possession. It's about respect, about memory, about the love that binds us to one another, even when greed tries to cut the thread. When someone tries to steal that, the truth must be louder than the lie. I turned back to Sophia, curled under a blanket with Lucy beside her, both of them smiling at something small, something ordinary. And I thought, this is the future Elena wanted for us. Not wealth, not power, just love, protected and alive. And if you've listened this far, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your child sold your house behind your back? Would you have stayed silent or fought for your family's truth? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. God bless you and your families, and stay tuned. The next story may just surprise you even more.